Live. So we're here today to chat with Chandra Zas to discuss the Handbook for Human Potential. Um, Super excited to be here. Super excited and honored to be here, as I'm also a contributor to the book. So this is the beginning of an interview series that Chandra wants to do. The intention is for all contributors to be interviewed, right? So this is just a warm-up interview for all of us to get used to the idea. And then we'll be refining our interview questions, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. It's going to be conversational. It's going to be, filled with lots of insights, and I get to be interviewed. So anyway, so if you have any questions or comments like during our interview today, if we have time at the end, we'll try and address and respond to those that we can. But we have a lot of questions to get through, so who knows? And so if you want to join the Handbook for Human Potential project, Chandra, where should they go?
There is a link below this video in the description that has the website for the landing page to join the newsletter, which is where you'll be able to be notified of upcoming interviews and book releases and all the such. Thank you so much, Seth, for doing this.
Okay.
And
I love it. I love this. I love this. All right, let's dive into the questions, shall we?
yes,
Because I can't wait to hear the responses to these questions too. So yeah, go ahead.
well, the only thing I was going to say is that this interview,
Yes.
the idea is that this is going to be different than the other interviews where this is really about my experience of organizing and compiling and editing the book, whereas
Right.
the other interviews will be focused more on the content of the chapters. Although I think it would be actually fun to hear about, an author's journey and a writer's journey. But the plan is for
Absolutely.
this to be like the backstory of how this book is created and the madness behind
What it
all of
takes
this.
to create and facilitate a project like this.
Wow.
For sure. For sure. For sure. All right, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. Okay, so what inspired you? That's my first question. What inspired you to create this handbook for human potential?
Yeah. So the little seed began when I was at a women's group, and one of the women was organizing a multi-author book, and I was interested because I've had a dream of writing since I was a child. Like it's been in my one of the authors, actually, Greg, he was like saying, he's like, thank you so much for this opportunity. I never thought about writing. And I was like, really? I've thought about writing since I was a child.
Wow.
So this woman,
Wow.
I looked into writing, being an author in her multi-author book, and I was like, well, what's the point of this? It's collaboration, it's networking, it's getting a message out there. And I sat and I remember was sitting by the river with my journal, and I was like, I looked at her group of the other authors, and I was like, I have a way more amazing group, at least in my opinion. So I was like, well, how many people do I know that I would like want to write a book with? And I was thinking, that have some kind of work in the world where they're in some kind of alignment. At that point, I didn't know what the common theme was. And off the top of my head, I wrote down 19 authors or 19
Wow.
people. And then I said, well, okay, this is interesting. I said, I didn't realize I knew so many. And I said, okay, well, who would be my top 5? How about if I reach out and like share this idea with my top 5 people? If they all say yes, I'll do it. So they all said yes.
Oh,
And I was like,
amazing. That's so cool.
I know. And I was
Wow.
like, okay. And so then I had at that point decided to do it. And then I reached out to a number of other people, and I looked at the list and I was like, well, what's the common theme? And I was like, the common theme is human potential. And so
Mm,
that's when when
love
I
that.
started keep going forward with like talking to the different authors and proposing the idea was to write about human potential. And and that's how the book was born.
Amazing.
That was fall of
Amazing. I
2023.
fall of 2023. Okay. So now we're 2 years later. And 2 years into this project. Wow. Okay. Okay. So why was it important to make this book collaborative as opposed to just by yourself?
Yeah, so one of the like higher level visions that I had with this book was one kind of like my own internal reflection of like what is important to me, and like what's for me. I've had jobs, I've made money doing things that necessarily I didn't feel were like true in my bones. And for me, the coaching work that I've been doing for the last several years, like if I really distill down the essence, it's about helping people grow, helping people step into their highest potential, helping people tune up their body and brain. And so I on a macro level, I really see that we're at this very special time to be alive, and that we have all of this technology and all of this information. and all of this power, and yet it's really easy to be overwhelmed, and it's really easy to check out and push the escape buttons. And I think that we are at an incredible time of human consciousness, of human evolution, of psychological awareness, that and all of this technology, like, we're able to share so much. And so my vision was like, how can, and then here's the other piece. So the other piece is like, for a lot of people who are interested in growing and self development, buying high ticket programs or buying courses is not always accessible. And so my idea was like, how do we get information into people who necessarily can't buy something expensive, but how can we still help humans who are interested in growing get access to information that they can implement into their own life? And so that was my big ask, was of each author, was, okay, I want you to write on human potential and what you think is the most important thing for someone to learn from your perspective, from your filter. And I want you to give them bulleted takeaways at the end of every chapter of something that, if that chapter resonates, that they can implement it into their life upon reading the chapter, so that it really, and that's how one of my friends said, oh, so it's like a handbook for human potential. I was like, yes, there's the title of the book.
Is that it? Is that because
Yes.
that's my next question, like, how that's how it came about? So and wow.
We were hiking
Okay.
up on New Year's Day this last year. We were hiking, and my friend was like, "So, what is this book all about?" And so I was describing it to her, and then
Yeah.
she came up with the distilled words. Yeah, thank
Wow.
you,
Handbook
Lindsay.
for Human Potential. Shout out to Lindsay. That's so cool. That's so cool. All right, because I want to ask that question then. Um, I guess, but no, you answered that already too. So, what gap or need did you feel this book was answering for humankind today?
Yeah. So I think a lot of my choice to do my work in the world, and I would say that probably I'm gonna take a little leap and guess that I can talk for a lot of the authors, is that the gap I see in our medical and our health system, is that it's like not necessarily for our health, that there's incentives that it's more for profit than it is for our health. And so I really see at this moment, at least in America, that that without really self-education, that it's really hard to live at one's potential, because there's a lot of information out there and it's not always for us. And so it's often for consuming and buying. And so my really big goal is to like get people, it's an interesting time between, science and, proof. And, so one of my big goals is like, well, self experimentation is to see, okay, well, here's something that somebody else says works, but try it on for yourself and actually see if it makes a difference in your own self. And so I look at this as like a resource for people to listen to their own body and say, is this something, does this resonate? And then how can I like play with it in my own life and see if it actually makes a difference? So it's really
Mm.
meant to be a handbook for people to, yeah, to try on themselves and feel better and show up better and live better, not in like a better or worse, but more optimized, I guess, maybe is the
Sure,
more neutral
sure.
word.
Enhanced. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Enhanced.
yeah. Abundant, prosperous, right? More tuned in, right? All those, yeah, okay. All right, so
Conscious.
let's conscious, yes. Let's switch to like the creation process of the book. So how did you I know that you at first I was gonna say how did you find and select the contributors, but like how did you narrow it down?
Well, I learned a really big lesson actually in this process, because one of the things that I just kind of touched on was like trying it on, and I would even say like somewhat intuition, but I also think it's more of like a kind of a gut knowing, an inner knowing. And so I really use that most of the time. There was definitely one person a couple times that I didn't listen, and I really learned that lesson again of like what it's, so I used a lot of, yeah, gut-based intuition and listening. And yeah, there's my woo
Okay.
side.
All right. And so from the 18 that you originally selected, how many of those 18 are part of our contributors?
So the first list was 19
Oh,
people,
19. Sorry.
and there was definitely, I don't know the exact numbers, there was definitely a handful of those people that it didn't line up with, and then there was another, I've only been living in Reno for almost 3 years now, and so there's a good handful of people that I've just actually met in the last 3 years, and so there
Mm.
is a good handful of us that are living in Reno that are newer friends of mine. Some of the authors I've known for over 20 years, a good
Wow,
handful
cool.
of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, did I answer that question?
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's cool. I like it. I like it. So what was the most surprising thing during the creation of this book for you? Or discovery, I guess.
The most surprising? Well, I think about projects, and I feel like, there's kind of a normal phrase of like projects always take twice as long and they're twice as expensive. And I would say this book project was more like 4 or 5 times as long and 4 or 5 times as expensive. Like, yeah, I had
Okay.
initially told all the authors, "Oh yeah, we're gonna be published by June of 2024. Like we're gonna, it was all gonna." I had found this publishing company that was gonna do the editing and the publishing, and I ignored a few flags in the beginning, and then ended up, yeah, in a total flip of the whole thing. And there was a moment where there was a few moments where I was really ready to give up, and I
I'm
became
sure.
really grateful that
Mm.
there was other authors involved, because I think if it was just me, I would have given up. And I was like, "Do I really wanna reach out to people and say, never
Right,
mind, I
right,
think I'm gonna
right.
cancel this project?" And so I had some moments where I was like,
Mm.
"It's an option to give up, and
Sure.
I don't wanna do that." And so the perseverance of having this group, and not only showing up for myself, but showing up for the group, and also really recentering back into, like, I really hope this book gets into hundreds of thousands of people's
Absolutely.
hands and hearts and minds. And so I also really look at the bigger picture, which, I'm just a little human doing my little work in the world. And yeah.
Big waves. Big waves. So, ooh, what would be some other challenges, or what are some other challenges that you had aside from the editing and publishing?
um
Yeah.
Not all of the authors are writers. And so it
Okay.
was very interesting because I was personally in contact with every author, and there was a small handful of authors that handed me their chapter, and there was very little edits, very little, maybe a little bit to become consistent with the book, but there was very little. But there was a good handful of authors that needed a lot of help, and so I really kind of, it was in there was a few things that happened. One is that, when a number of authors I talked to about this process of, like, when you actually put things in writing and you put things out into the world, you see it from a different angle. And so there was a big inner process for a lot of the authors. And I would say probably I was actually one of the most tortured authors, because I had my own deadlines, and
Right,
I wrote
right.
my own chapter. I wrote 10 versions of my own chapter. I have a book of like different options for my chapter.
Wow.
Um, and I think there was a few of us who really struggled with, like, what is my main message and how do I want to say it and how do I portray myself. So there was, I would say, I'm actually curious to hear from the authors when I do interviews with them, to hear what their process was like in this. Putting something in writing it's powerful. It's reflective, it's torturous, it's yeah, it's really, yeah, it was, yeah. A few of the authors I really helped write their chapters. A few of them we just did. I mean, yeah, I think I would say I have a folder of this book, and there's anywhere from 5 to 20 versions of
Per
every chapter
chapter? Oh my
per
gosh.
chapter. So I've read this book myself at least 5 times. Some of the chapters 20
I'm so
times.
curious, like, as you were going through all these chapters, did, like, specific themes or messages, like, organically kind of arise? Like, that you didn't anticipate?
Themes. I think, yeah, it was interesting hearing. So the Jeffrey Kripal wrote the foreword for our book, and he
Cool.
is on the board at Esalen, and he's someone that Mac Murphy introduced to me. And he's a well-published author, and he wrote the history of Esalen as one of his big books that he wrote.
Awesome.
And he's one of the, I would say, one of the main one of the out there advocates for human potential, and when I asked him what he thought of the book, and he said a really interesting thing about like how how the body. I'm butchering his words here, but how the body is something that's hard to describe in words. It's way more than words, and it gave me this angle of the book of realizing how much of the book is really about the body. Um, there if even if you think about, there's a couple chapters on psychedelics, and even if you think about, the mind or spirituality, there's still the brain component, and the brain is still part of our body. And so I think this, like in the very end, actually surprised me. I think if I really reflect back, I could see it through each chapter. There is such this element of the body
Mhm.
and how much the mind affects the body, how much there's all different, but if our bodies, yeah, I think that would be the surprising thing, and maybe I'm still not totally articulate on it, but that how much of the book really is about, if I guess if our human body is where our human potential lies, because if our human body is not functioning well, then our brain's not functioning well,
Right.
our energy is not functioning well. So yeah, I would say actually it really is about the body, which is I would not have thought that from the beginning, but it makes total sense now that I'm on the other side of all this.
Right. Would you say that the vision of the book, like in your mind, has evolved or changed a lot since the beginning? Completely, right?
Yeah, I mean, there is
So
I
no?
really I'm really grateful that I had the idea of doing the bulleted takeaways, which ended up being phrased as the key takeaways at the end of the chapter, because I feel like that was a really good anchor. And
Mhm.
I think it helped me, it helped a lot of authors kind of be like, well, what's the practical use of this? But I would say, yeah, I mean, I think in some ways I had this vision of writing a book, and I had really had no idea what the journey would be like. And so the whole journey was this totally different thing. I mean, didn't really know what to expect, but it was harder, and took so much more than I planned. So
Mm.
yeah, it was it was
I mean, well friggin' done. Well done. Well done. Well done. All right, let's talk about the contributors a little bit more. So, how would you describe the group that you brought together in
one
10
of
sentences or less? Just kidding.
am I talking too much?
No, no,
Um
I know. I'm just saying, like, it's a very big question, right? So,
yeah, one of my really dear friends, Britta, she had this phrase that I had never heard about, a way shower. And I really
okay.
loved the ring of it, and I really thought about putting it in the title. And I had to look it up when she mentioned it. I didn't know what it was at the time, which is partly why I didn't put it in the title, because I didn't want people to have to look up words. But I really love the phrase way shower, and I do think it really describes the authors, because a way shower, and there's a beautiful description of it that I do not have written down right here. But essentially, it is kind of the people who are like kind of ahead of their time, or on the cutting edge, or on the fringe, who are experimenting and kind of leading the way. And I would say that would really describe the authors, in a
Love it.
nutshell. That it's yeah.
I love that. Mm, way showers. Got it. Got it. So what makes this group's wisdom like powerful, unique, and timely? I mean, I know
Hmm.
I'm asking you to like to to consolidate 18 different contributors into
Repeat the
one
question.
answer.
What makes the authors
What
what?
makes the group's wisdom like powerful, unique, and or timely?
Yeah, I would say it really tags on to my last answer with way showers, where it is people who are walking the walk, and self practicing, living. They're really embodying and living the life that they are way showing, or way finding. I think that is, I have come to really appreciate, so many people, and I would say right now, post pandemic, and all of the stress that I think is a lot of people are feeling the last several years, and the amount of, a lot of people are just, in the grind, working a lot of hours, and don't have the luxury to invest in researching. And so I would really say that this is like, these are people who've devoted their lives to figuring out how to increase their human potential in their specialty. And so it's like, each chapter is this nugget of like hours, years of, self research and research with their clients or whoever they're working with. So it's a wealth of wisdom, compacted down into a little powerful chapter.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, what are some things that you learned from each of the chapters or each of the I mean, there's lots of
Mm.
questions about learning, but yeah.
For writing the book, I would
Yeah.
say the biggest lesson I learned was like trusting my gut. The
Okay.
couple times I
Okay.
didn't, I was reminded how important it is to trust my gut.
Okay.
That was the biggest personal lesson I got on writing the book or on organizing and compiling the book. And then honestly, I was really moved by every single chapter. Every single chapter, as I read every chapter so many times, and each chapter I actually felt changed by. Like
Wow.
there's two chapters on breath, and I think it's one of the easiest ones because like it was literally like as I was reading them, I was like, oh right, and I was breathing so much more just reading about breath and reading about the importance of breath. And so each chapter, yeah, I mean, I was affected by every single chapter. I
Wow.
personally took in like what the key takeaways were. Like I ran these chapters through my own body. There's a beautiful one of the chapters is on death, and it's such a profound chapter in its message of like not only creating a conscious exit, but also how to bring death more into our daily life to live more, even if we're not at death's door. But just, I mean, I could talk about
I
each
love it. I
and
love it.
every chapter. It's like,
Tell
yeah,
me one
each
more.
one.
Give me one more.
The other one that just randomly pops to mind is one of the chapters on Chinese medicine, and she has a phrase in there that says, "Eat lunch like a king and dinner like a pauper." And so it was, and I mean,
I
I've heard
love
it before,
that.
but the phrase itself
Right.
just like rung with me, and I was like,
Right.
and we actually reorganized our family meals to have like to follow it. I mean, it's interesting because I do think this book is for people who are maybe like growth curious or self development curious, but I also know like even for people who are well on this path that there's and they even know things, have heard of things, and this was my experience. Is like I've spent over 20 years in growing and development, but hearing things again and hearing things a certain way and letting them land. And I would say like this lunch like a king and dinner like a pauper is a really good example. It was like just such a succinct phrase that I was like, yes, I know that like eating a lighter dinner and having organizing my food to support better sleep is, yeah, it's crucial. The
Sounds like
other
you've
chapters I really want to mention, there was
yeah.
two topics that I really felt were important to have in the book. And so which were psychedelics and sleep.
Yeah.
And these are the two topics that I actually really wanted astrology, and astrology didn't happen either because it was an interesting thing to learn about. That's another story. But psychedelics and sleep were two that I really sought out. And one of the tricky things is some people who are, willing to publicly talk about psychedelics. And psychedelics have just been such a huge I like to call them brain changers. And actually in the book they're titled brain changers because there's all kinds of different brain changers.
I
There's
yeah.
pharmaceuticals, there's alcohol,
Right.
there's
Right.
prescription pills, but specifically psychedelics. And so I was very grateful to find two people who've become my good friends through this process to speak on psychedelics because in my own experience, and you can find some info on my website where I talk about my trips outside of the US and how the work that I was doing, the growth that I was doing, um, was really complemented and what I call kind of taken from the intellectual learning into my somatic, like cellular knowing. And I
Mhm.
just think psychedelics have such this power to really, I don't think that by themselves, I think they really need the work like this book
For
before
sure.
and after, like what are the fake it till you make it? What are the habits? And then bring, one of the, Burton is one of the authors and he's working with legislature around psychedelics. And he is currently, since this book started, he has been working with Stanford to do post stroke research with psilocybin to heal the brain, which is just, I
Wow.
think, one of the most
Wow.
exciting things. So, yeah,
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
yeah.
How has this project changed you? You said that every chapter changed you. So, like, I guess overall.
Yeah, I during this last year, maybe even this book process, I definitely have gone through a lot of personal transformation. And I think that being in contact with all of the authors and, I would say there was a level of intimacy with these authors that was very profound for me. And and in a lot of ways also like very humbling, and a good handful of them are, have been my dear friends, and another handful of them have become my dear friends. And I was really regularly, there was a lot of deadlines and they were soft deadlines, and a lot of the deadline,
Right.
like a lot of people were like not responding. And so I did a lot of like, I had everyone's personal text message, and I was doing a lot of personal connection. And many, many, many times a lot of the authors went through, really hard moments during this last couple of years. There was, ER visits and stuff with parents, and I don't want to get into too many of the details, but it was very like humbling to be in contact with all the authors and hear what was really going on in their personal lives,
Mm,
and
yeah.
making space. And one of my biggest one of my biggest mottos is like there's really nothing worth rushing for or stressing about unless it's maybe an ER trip. And so how can I continually bring that energy back to my own life and to this book of like how do we, yes, let's keep moving forward. And almost every author had like really hard moments during the
Mm,
process. So I had to kind of, I chose to be, somewhat flexible and like, okay, how do we keep this moving, and how do we, not create stress and not create pressure, and
right.
trust when things, yeah. The woman who's formatting the book, actually, she just told me last 2 weeks ago that she's moving to France, and I think she flew to France yesterday. So there was,
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
just so many like personal crazy stories that I was like, okay, this will be part of the
This is
journey.
um, so if the book had one kind of core message, right? What would you say that is?
I think the core message for me is that like that I hope that every reader takes in is like you don't have to change at all. Like I really think it's important, and I questioned all of the authors whenever they had have tos in their chapters. I wanted them to be very intentional because I really believe there's almost nothing that I would even argue nothing we have to do. We don't have to eat, we don't have to sleep, we don't have to live even. We could take it to a very extreme,
Right.
Um, and so I really hope that this message like also comes to the readers, that like just because there's this book and just because there's these possibilities of investment and growth, nobody has to do any of it. And to really tune into, do I want to do this? And this is definitely like part of my coaching brain that comes out, like to implant like how much it will affect you personally, but also collectively, and also our next generation, without the pressure or the have to of like why this work is really worth it for, us personally and also us collectively. That
So sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about like the reader and the audience for this book. Who's this book for?
Yeah, I think I've already touched on it
Yeah.
in a couple questions, but and I had many of the authors ask that question, which I was glad that question came up many times. But my answer has been is that this is for people who are already on the path, already curious about personal growth and raising consciousness. And I mean, human potential is Shasta. This is my doggy Shasta.
Hi.
Um, but yeah, it's for people. I've got a lot of excitement whenever I talk about this book. A lot of people are very excited about it, and I've had a few people say, "Oh, like I'm already well down this path, but I would really love my brother who's like more curious about it. I would love him to have a book like this. And so
Sure.
I would say it's definitely for people who are already on the path and people who are maybe friends who people want to hand the book to and say, "Hey, here's a little some several topics to dip your toes in and try on." And yeah,
Okay.
so people on
Okay.
the yeah, people curious and interested in self-development and growth.
Now share us with us your thoughts on like how the readers can best use the book. For example, like to read it like end to end, or like read it like one chapter per day, one chapter per week. Like what's your suggestion there?
Yeah, so I have this is definitely influenced from my own. I remember even in school I would like skip around and read like the end and the middle and the I definitely go out of order, which I know that Diana, who writes on human design, would say fits perfectly with my manifesting generator
Right.
style.
Type. Yeah.
So I think honoring, each person's choice on how they want to approach the book. But my suggestion is to kind of use the book almost like a tarot deck or as a internal intuitive compass, like to maybe scan the table of contents and look what chapter kind of pops out or what grabs their
Mm,
attention. And
okay.
so even though I did organize the book in some kind of, there is some kind of order to it, my hope is that people go toward the top chapter that they're drawn to. And then I think there's a lot in each chapter. And so I love that you brought in like, read one a week or what. So I would say, because it's easy to just like consume. This is one of my coaching teachers, Brooke Castillo. She had this concept of like consume, create as much as you consume. So like consume 50% and then give and then create
Mm,
50%. And so I would love to encourage readers to actually read a chapter and see if it lands, see if there are things, and actually like create from that. Don't just consume the whole book at once, but to really play with, okay, like now how do I take this in? How do I see what fits for me? What are the key takeaways? How do I play with it for a period of time and then come back to the book so that it's yeah, almost more like even the word manual is coming up to think of it kind of like a manual.
sure.
And yeah, I would love it if it was, left out on the coffee table or by the bedside and something that's like come back to over and over again.
I, I just got this feeling of like I can't wait for you to receive the book the very first time. I know it's
Friday.
it's it's so cool, it's so cool. All right, so I know we've spoken a little bit about this too, but what do you hope the readers will walk away with after reading it?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest walkaways is like that there is a lot that we can do personally in our own daily life that makes a really big difference. Think that's like it's very doable, it's very possible to make little shifts that accumulate to big shifts.
Okay, all right. I have some questions about like the future. So, do you see this as because I felt this for you, but do you feel that this is something bigger, like a movement, a series? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I am putting on the book that it's volume 1. So, yeah, I also, I know in my own experience of doing, being an entrepreneur that the first time is always the hardest, that there's all of the systems and all of the just insane amount of learning how to use Word, learning how to, I mean, just so much.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
very, very grateful for your help in the publicity part. Like even just having your camaraderie and your assistance has just been, I mean, every yeah, I just really am deeply grateful.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
yeah,
Thanks.
and so yeah, I see this. We'll see how it goes, but my hope is that it's volume 1. I mean, it is
Okay.
volume 1, but there will be volume 2.
Yes. So what would you I mean, have you thought about volume 2? Like what would be next for that? Have you thought about it? It's
In
totally
my
fine if you say no.
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I have definitely a few ideas. I would love to do one specifically on parenting. I think parenting is,
Mm, I love that.
our next generation, I think is just, I wish parents and I wish kids had a lot more support and, it really is our future. So I'm something I'm very passionate about. So I would love to do an entire book on parenting, human potential
Mhm.
for parenting, or parenting human potential. I don't know what that book title would be.
Yeah,
Um,
love it.
but from what I understand of how books go is that, like, you self-publish your first book, and then hopefully it's great and a publishing company wants to help make the next one happen. So I'm hoping that I did all the heavy lifting, and the idea is that this book is a huge success and helps a lot of people and becomes something that people want more of.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So is there anything else that you wanna talk about, discuss before we kinda end?
I think my just really big request, if you've made it to the end of this video, because I know that all of our attention spans are so short. So if you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for being here. You're probably our, what is it, fans, friends, and family that are here at this point in the video.
Right, right.
And so, yeah, my biggest ask and request is that buy our book, sign up for the newsletter, get notified of when the book comes live, read it, and of course, if it's crap, don't share it. But if it moves you, and if there are people that you think would also benefit from it, share it. I think that is like my biggest like ask and request of this video is, yeah, buy it and share it and love it and spread it, pay it forward.
Awesome, awesome. And then you will have links, right? Like on this YouTube below, over. Ah, now I lost you. I wonder why I lost her. It's been so much fun in this interview. And to be a contributor too, it was awesome experience.
Is it? Oh,
I can hear you.
yes.
I can see you.
I don't know. That was such a weird blip. I don't know. Weird. Okay. I heard you the whole time, so I'm guessing the
Perfect.
recording also heard you the whole time.
Perfect.
So yes, there will, below this video, there are already links to the landing page of this book, which is, please sign up and get on the newsletter list. And they will be there also in the redistribution of this. That there's one main handbook for human potential.com, and we bought .org too. So cover all the
Yay.
bases.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well,
Thank you so much, Seth.
thank you
Thank you,
for
thank you, thank
having
you.
me
And
do
I look
this.
forward to interviewing you and hearing
Yeah,
about your
absolutely.
methods.
Yeah, I gotta reread my
Yes.
chapter so it's like fresh in my head. I was thinking that I'm like, oh God, I gotta get that. Anyway, well, thank you
The
so
smile
much.
method, the grace
Right,
method.
right.
I can remind you.
I love it. I love it.
Thank you, Seth. I
Okay,
really
thanks.
appreciate you.
Okay, bye.
Okay.
Bye.